Meanwhile, ANC leaders from across the country are sending their condolences to Umama Madikizela Mandela's family. These messages also come from other opposition parties. And we're joined in studio by the president of the ANC's Women's League, Umama Bathabile Dlamini. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you listen to people, but it seems so surreal. Umama Winnie had been almost like an eternal spirit, that this was totally unexpected.
Yeah.
And the Women's League, I mean, you have a bigger job now, a baton that you need to carry forward. Just tell us about her influence in the political structures, especially in the emancipation of women.
I think she was a strong believer in women's leadership. Secondly, she also wanted to see other women growing in the struggle. And thirdly, she tried by all means to show us that patriarchy can be fought.
And all that struggle, what we also tend to forget, because everybody lauds the fact and commends her strength, that there had been moments, or the better part of her life, where she had been alone, where she was isolated not only from her husband, but not being able to see her children, the confinement in prison, and being banished. That who was there for Umama Winnie at the time where she felt most vulnerable?
I think the ordinary people of South Africa were with Mam Winnie. Faith-based organizations were with Mam Winnie. And women who started forming early childhood development centers, as well as the youth that pinned their hopes on her. And that is why she was called Mama. She ended being called the mother of the nation. It did not just come. It was because of her commitment towards the poor. She believed in fighting for children, the vulnerable. And she was always with the sections of the community that are vulnerable up until the end of her life.
A true revolutionary, because if you look at what the apartheid regime had imposed, some of the harshest punishment and the indignity that she had suffered. But at the time when she was in Brantford, and now all of this we talk obviously anecdotally, and people talk about how fond they became of her, because even there she applied herself and her kindness and love in creating systems that will enable the community to function. Establishing the first creche or nursery for mothers to be able to go to work. Tell us more about that side that is often not reported.
I think there, people at first were afraid of her. And then she started working very hard to ensure that there was an ECD, but also a clinic. And we all know that women can't live without a clinic for their children and just for themselves. But also, Mam Winnie carried the torch of the struggle together with Masisulu when everyone was in prison. If it was not for strong women like Mam Winnie at a particular time, when there was a lull, you would not have an organization like the ANC. And you would not have vibrant young people like Comrade Ace, Comrade Peter Mkaba. But also, he had love and a soft spot for vibrant young people.
And the title, as you're saying, Mother of the Nation, where many might think it is only a political endearment, it is that she is a community-based leader, a social worker, one of the first, I think, in Paraguana.
Medical.
And how she, you know, her care and her kindness permeated communities. She's not just an ANC symbol of liberation. She is iconic for the country and the world.
She shared her education with the whole nation, not with just a few. She was a social worker of a special type. A social worker that would have sat down, looked at her children, and had a different life. She was also beautiful, but the contest that she was part of was a very difficult contest, a struggle for the liberation of the people.
And I mean, as a young, as you say, beautiful, I mean, she's in my view, one of the most beautiful women in the world.
Oh, yes.
Even in her golden years, but and carried that beauty so in a modest way. She was unassuming about even her aura, her presence, and her strength. Very quiet, if you will, but when it's time to be defiant and rebellious, you wouldn't be able to match her toe to toe. Had you had any confrontations with her where you may have felt, I've messed up and I'm in trouble?
Actually, she was very different. She would allow you to commit mistakes. And then thereafter, she would call you, sit you down, and say, this is how the ANC does its work. She allowed us to make a lot of mistakes. And sometimes the ANC would be angry with her when actually we were the ones who started a problem. Also, even within the ANC Women's League, she was loved a lot. I remember the first conference after the unbanning. They came in with Bono Mvula Mukonyan singing Egole Goli, Johannesburg ukhona umkhonto. And that in itself said Mam Winnie was not for the Women's League only, but also she was for Umkhonto Wesizwe. She was a soldier of Umkhonto Wesizwe.
And one that is celebrated throughout the world, and our condolences again to the family and the loved ones and the organization. Talk us through some of the mistakes that you said you were allowed to make. If you look in retrospect, even in your career, having held various positions in cabinet, what are some of your personal or professional mistakes you feel you could have done differently or chosen differently?
Firstly, we demanded that Mam Winnie should be our president. And I don't regret about that, because she showed us her strength. But what I regret about was when we had an opportunity to elect her as the first deputy president, woman deputy president in the ANC. And because of the pressure, we succumbed, and she ended up standing down for that position. But also what I like about her is that she did not regret about that. She was not bitter about that. And for her, the struggle was not a positions. The struggle was about changing the quality of lives of the people.
Yes, and to put it in context, so this was when Umama Winnie had the opportunity of being a deputy president of the ANC and
Yes.
then would have been the deputy president of the country, but that post then went to President Jacob Zuma. So we're
Yes.
talking, what is this, 2005, you know, for the young people to keep a timeline. But
Yes.
nonetheless, so she turned that down.
Again.
And then she turned that down, and you know, gracefully so. But I want to come back to the ANC Women's League, that you had another opportunity on the 54th elective conference,
Yes.
where Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma was standing. We also saw Lindiwe Sisulu, etc. But there seems to be a tendency still from the Women's League to perpetuate that culture of patriarchy and not support the woman in your numbers. You know, are there those dynamics and divisions, and why is that?
Women are not homogeneous. They are different, and they will always be different. But what we have not learned is that at some stage we need to close ranks. And the lesson for the past conference for me is that we did not call all women that were standing for different positions, galvanize them to come together so that we could bring together more women. But over and above that, there are those that supported men. I don't have a problem with those ones. But with the ones that support the agenda for gender equality, I do feel that we could have done more. But we are moving forward. That's one and part of our lessons. And we are growing. And the coming women will be much better than us.
Yeah, and just realizing the aspiration of having a woman president, that if we hadn't been ready with Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, whom you can argue would have been a much more, I suppose, experienced and a more mature leader, to give the South African population the opportunity to choose whether we are ready for a woman president. But the Women's League was also on record, or I think it was under Umam Enji Mutsayaga at the time, that there was a sense or reluctance that we're not ready for a woman president. What is the actual stance of the ANC Women's League? What do you stand for?
We stand for the emancipation of women. We fight violence against women. We try and ensure that we position women and put them in decision-making bodies. And saying that women are not ready is patriarchal. You must also remember we grew up in patriarchal families. But I must also say that at some stage, Comrade Angie did say that we were ready as women to have a woman president. But this is the storyline of men. Why? Because they want to ensure that there is patriarchy. And what has happened after the conference, again, is a big hammer of patriarchy, fighting women, saying no other woman must ever stand up and fight for a good cause.
How will that void then be filled? That radicalism that is required, the fearless approach to transformation within the ANC Women's League, and as you're saying, it's not a homogenous group, but you as women, you have the ability to change destinies, as we've seen with Mama Winnie or Mama Albertina, your Charlotte Maxakes, and in their time, who had defied the odds and adversities to achieve their own ambitions and also to impact the lives of other women. Where's the radicalism within the ANC Women's League?
I think if you can see the way we are mobilizing right now, it's different. we have young women in the ANC Women's League, but also we are saying to them there are more opportunities for them. And those opportunities are not about individual self. Those opportunities are about the ordinary women, about a poor women, and therefore if we continue fighting very hard, we are going to see the difference. And what is good is that South African ordinary women are beginning to recognize younger women like Abo Nompendulo, who led a Fees Must Fall campaign. And that is saying that we are not going to have a void, but we are having more younger women that are growing, that are going to fit into the shoes of women like Anne-Sophie de Bruyn, like Mampeta Kowa, like Lillian Ngoyi, like Winnie, like Ruth Mampati, like Dorothy Nyembe. So we do have young women that are continuing to fight, and we are not going to stop because we did not win the conference in Nazareth. Our struggle is not about conferences only. Our struggle is about the realization of education, ensuring that there is a radical economic transformation, ensuring that the land goes to the rightful owners. And in all these areas, women are going to benefit, and that is going to make a huge change in the lives of women.
And that would be also in honor of Umamweni. I mean, there's talk of course, she's having, and deservedly so, a special state funeral. And there will be all sorts of monuments. As it is now, there are certain areas, I think, La Tembisa, not too far from the our Midrand studios, there is a Winnie Mandela Park, or Ivory Park, etc. So, but I think the greatest honor would be to ensure that the lives of those that you are so closely anchored with, it is changed materially, that people are not in squalor, don't live in inhumane conditions, hunger, all of those things.
Yes, Ma'am Winnie actually ensured that there was no household that slept without a plate of food on the table. And for us, this must be a lesson. Ma'am Winnie wanted to see all of us having houses, all of us being educated and sharing that education with ordinary people. Ma'am Winnie wanted to see children in early childhood development centers, because she knew that if you take a child to an ECD center, you are beginning the process of human development.
So what are the policies that are in place, or programs that are in place, that are going to expedite? It's 24 years into democracy, and you know there's a frustration bubbling that change needs to come. It's now time for the second transition, and the people's patience has literally reached the threshold that we need to move on. What are those policies that can be enacted? Because we know they're there. They just need to be implemented.
I think for us as women, what we need to ensure is for each and every department to have a gender budget. And each and every ministry, province, municipality must show how it has contributed towards the development of women. And again, for us as women, we must be able to negotiate or ensure that the Treasury understands gender budgeting. Because without gender budgeting, without proper policies, without planning, monitoring, and evaluation, we're going to always say, generally, government has done well for women. No, we have to measure what each and every government department is doing, as well as the private sector, ensuring that there are women in decision-making bodies. Yes.
But the capacity of the state, because there is over-reliance on government to deal with issues of redress, to ensure that there is a conducive environment for business. So there are multiple functions that government does beyond being a policymakers. So how do we make realize the gender budget if it's not a policy yet? So you're talking about a process of consultation or negotiating, begging, whatever it is that women need to do to try and realize this. How is that how it's going to work?
It's not going to work like that. Once you have a women's ministry, surely you understand that the women of that country are oppressed. There is a patriarchy in their space, and therefore, in order to fight a patriarchy, you must have programs that are going to empower women, that are going to make women be at the same level with men, so that if women are given an opportunity, they excel because of the output that comes from government.
So the gender budget is something that we can anticipate. I mean, we've just had the budget speech in February. Is that included in there? Are there programs that will be specifically focused on women development in various structures of government?
What I've received as a report is that there is work that was done by previous ministers, but we need to try and just close small gaps, ensure that everyone understands that we are not begging. We were part of the struggle, and therefore women must also benefit, because the ANC kept on saying we were part of the motive forces and we stood to benefit from the struggle for the liberation of our people.
Yes. Winnie, besides being a mother of the nation and caring for the poor, the indigent, homeless, I think one commentator even said she was a mother of the unwashed, those that were neglected, etc., were unwanted. She would go to that level, and that's where she poured out her heart. So in modern day South Africa, what message are you as the ANC Women's League sending to women if you are saying, by your own admission, that you buckled under pressure when Winnie Mandela could have been deputy president? We saw with the Nasrec 54th national elective, something similar happened there. What message are you saying to young people that you're going to take on the baton of a gallant fighter who was fearless, who stood up to a regime as a sole defenseless woman, but she was able to move the environment or shift the environment that she's in? What is the ANC Women's League, in your view, sending as a message?
Firstly, we need to pick up the spear of Mam Winnie. Secondly, we need to talk to all women, more particularly poor women, because we stand for the poor, not for the elite. And thirdly, Cindy, uMam Winnie mayengena endlini la kuphuzwa ngojeke owakhiwe ngetin yeFrisco would pick up that tin and drink water or amahewu out of it. When we felt small, she would remind us where we come from. And therefore, we must always remember who we are and where we come from. We must not think that we are better than other people. And when we have made mistakes, we must have the capacity to apologize and ensure that we move forward with the struggle for the liberation of women.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Madam President of the ANC Women's League. Bathabile Dlamini, nice to have you in studio. Really appreciate your time. Of course, tributes are pouring in from all quarters of the world for Umama Winnie Mandela, with many saying that she is a selfless fighter who really was also a gentle giant, if you will, that shared her time with the unwashed, those that were persona non grata, and those that were banished as she was during her struggle. But we continue with the broadcast. Do stay with us. We take a quick break. We'll see you shortly.